I'm Scott Lucas. This is today's EA Worldview on Syria, Israel, Hezbollah, and Assad. Last week, Israeli forces carried out an airstrike on a Hezbollah position just inside Lebanon. Apparently, they were targeting missiles, as they have done in several other operations over the past year, from anti-ship weaponry taken out in a warehouse in Latakia on the western coast of Syria, to an attack on a convoy on the main road between Damascus and Beirut, wiping out several vehicles and whatever it was they were carrying. This is not a story of Israel getting directly into the Syrian war, but it is still quite an important story, not necessarily about the Israelis, but about Hezbollah. You see, the Israeli attack on Hezbollah, taking out some of their weaponry, is a symbol of much greater pressures on the Lebanese group. Get beyond the headlines, the imagery of threat, the statements of Hezbollah leader Sheikh Nasrallah, and you have an organization under a great deal of pressure. They are under pressure in Syria, to be sure, even though we get daily proclamations of how Hezbollah are helping the Assad regime win, say, for example, in the current offensive between Damascus and the Lebanese border. We also have reports of Hezbollah losing many men, claims by the opposition of hundreds of men, as they carry out those operations. We certainly know that Hezbollah have had to devote a lot more resources, a lot more effort into the Syrian insurgency over the past year, whether or not their losses are as great as claimed by the insurgency. This is not what Hezbollah wanted. When they went in to assist the Assad regime in the spring of 2013, for example, to take Qusair on the Lebanese border, they were looking at a much more limited operation, one which would secure mainly Shia villages on the Lebanese-Syrian border, a buffer zone, if you will, against the Syrian opposition. But that wasn't going to be all. The Assad regime, in the nature of its fight, needed more than a Hezbollah buffer zone. They needed the Lebanese organization fighting around Damascus, in central Syria, possibly even in Aleppo province. In other words, Hezbollah was drawn further and further into a fight that it didn't necessarily want. Why? Because it's not just a question of Hezbollah in Syria. It's a question of Hezbollah in Lebanon. Remember, this is a group which is part of the Lebanese government, has ministers, a group which claims that it is carrying out social and political responsibilities. The more that it gets involved with a fight which appears to be never-ending in Syria, the more that it risks seeming detached from the day-to-day concerns of Lebanese, especially if those Lebanese are suffering, for example, bomb attacks in Beirut or in Hermel, near the Syrian border, because of Hezbollah's links to Assad. And it's not just pressure on Hezbollah in Syria or pressure on Hezbollah in Lebanon, it's also pressure from Israel. Even if the Israelis don't want an all-out war with Hezbollah, they're always there. They can always carry out those airstrikes, not only to take out missiles, but just as a sign of power. In other words, Sheikh Nasrallah and his men are caught between the Syrian conflict and Israel in a tense situation, politically, economically, and militarily in Lebanon. This is not the strategy for a Hezbollah ascendancy. And the fact is that the longer that they carry on fighting in Syria, in a conflict which doesn't necessarily offer them immediate reward, the greater the risk they take. I'm Scott Lucas, and this is today's EA Worldview on Syria.